This is Karen Ramsey of Super Healthy Children, and just recently there have been a couple videos from speakers on YouTube channels who have claimed that we cannot raise healthy 100% raw vegan children. And I just want to give you my part in that and what my response is, because I have had the experience that yes, we can raise very healthy raw vegan children. I don't put a percentage on it. My children were not always 100% raw vegan. I don't put a percent on anything. However, I do believe that the raw food lifestyle is the best way to raise our families. Now, it was claimed that our children cannot get enough calories eating raw food, and that they need to eat more complex foods for their calorie needs, such as rice and beans. Well, I found otherwise. My son was very sick with asthma, chronic ear infections, and multiple food allergies while being vegan, eating rice and beans. So that was not something that he was digesting very well as a young child. I myself had to take Beano just to digest the beans. I had to take Beano frequently just to digest them. So I don't recommend going that route. Fruit is very easy to digest, especially when it's ripe, and that's why the bananas should have lots of speckles on them. Fruit goes very quickly from the stomach into the intestines and then is absorbed or goes out of the body very quickly. And so my children grew up on green juices and smoothies and green smoothies and lots of fruit and lots of veggies. And when the mother, during her pregnancy, eats this healthy way, eating an abundance of fruits and vegetables, the child naturally gravitates towards it because they already have the taste through the mother's amniotic fluid. And then when the mother nurses the baby learns to love raw food through the milk if the mother is eating this way. And what better way is there to grow our children? My children are now young adults, and I am totally glad that I was able to raise them this way, and I felt that they definitely got enough calories. Now, my children were not on a low-fat, raw vegan diet. I do not agree that children should be on those kinds of diets. And I have seen where parents have failed because they're trying to follow 80-10-10 or some kind of low-fat diet for their growing child. No, that's not a good idea. Children have growth spurts. They're very often very physically active. They're growing. They need to have those fatty foods. They need to have the avocados, the nuts and the seeds, coconut. My children did very well on them, and so do many of the children in families who I have worked with. There's something wrong if the child is lethargic or if the growth is stunted, which these authors are claiming that the children who they've seen who were raised on raw vegan diets, that their growth was stunted, that they were hyperactive. What I found was quite contrary, that they grew at a normal rate. And I was one of those very conscious people, very anal-minded, who went to a pediatrician every year. And I went for wellness checkups, and every year my pediatrician put my children on a growth chart, and he said that my children were on that chart. They were never off of that chart. And they were always at the lower end. They grew at a slower rate than the other children who were their age, who were growing up on growth hormones. And they were eating food that was easily digested. My children also had really good endurance. My son could play sports for longer than the other children because of the endurance that the raw food gave him. What I found was that the children who I've observed that were doing diets that were very high or totally raw were feeling less hyperactivity. They're actually calm, but also very energetic. So these foods do give them an abundance of energy, but also enable them to be calm. I'd also like to point out that some women whose either vegan or raw vegan children have not thrived and whose growth has been stunted, that I have noted with some of them that they didn't nurse for long enough. And a child needs a milk source for, I believe, at least a year to 2 years. And very often women discount that. If they have a problem, they don't try to get a lactation consultant, and there's many excellent lactation consultants out there who can help a woman with whatever kind of nursing problem she has. And there's very, very few problems that would keep a woman from being able to nurse her child. That milk, that breast milk from the child's mother or from a wet nurse or from a milk bank, that milk will give a child the crucial fat and protein content that that child needs during that early development period. And that those nutrients and that protein and that fat in that milk is what's going to cause the child to grow properly. So we can't replace that with any kind of raw solid food in the first year. People who just go into this very blindly and they don't try to get the appropriate information, and they're using a lot of raw foods that are not healthy. And so that's why they really need to get educated, because people come into the raw food movement thinking that just eating raw food, and that could be raw packaged food too these days. So raw is not really something that you want to pay so much attention to. You really want to look at the word fresh. Like I always say, hang out in the produce department. I also would like to stress that when listening to people who are talking about raising healthy children, that the information should be given by somebody who has actually raised children. My real world experience trumps supposition.